You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey all, welcome back to Cards to the Moon, and if this is your first time tuning in, you're listening to a good one because it is our 100th episode. My name is Clark from 5 Card Guys on Instagram and 5cardguys.com, and with me co-hosting since episode 1 is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess. So off the top, I wanted to ask my co-host, did you think we'd be doing this podcast when we started it back in January of 2021 for this long? And how would you describe this podcast journey so far?
Honestly, I don't think I even thought this far that would be done a year, but it did fly. The main thing that I like about this, and I encourage everybody in the hobby, just start your own podcast and see if you get a following, because what it does is it engages you in the hobby. It keeps you, educated. It keeps you motivated. It keeps you, informed so that you can make better decisions. So it kind of like, there are times when I obviously get busy with, regular life and stuff like that, but then it forces you to kind of like study and kind of like say, okay, what's on your buy list now, and what releases are coming up. And then if you're someone who likes to rip like me, obviously that's kind of like a big deal. So it works perfectly for me, and I enjoyed this run so far. It doesn't even feel like it's I guess it's something that we have to spend a lot of time doing. It's kind of like we meet Tuesday, talk about cards, and Clark, you do a good job, setting up, the questions kind of like on a tee for us. So It's been awesome just being able to just talk sports, and through that we've been able to even communicate with outside, loyal hobbyists who share the same vision or same kind of joy in the hobby, I guess. So it's been nothing but positives. Obviously, 100 episodes is a lot of content, but maybe one day we'll look back and see how outdated our takes were.
We could do more dead wrong segments.
Yeah, it's all good.
Sure.
It's not about being right or wrong. It's all about the journey,
the
right?
Entire 2022 dead wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Man, this continues to just be such a humbling experience. Like, we're just a bunch of dudes like everybody else in the hobby that loves to talk cards, and that's all we're doing, and the fact that people are listening and we're getting people with really positive comments from all over the States, all over the world is incredible. It's not something that, like, it's not real until you see the comment and where it's coming from, and you're like, wow, that's pretty incredible that this person is saying, I listen all the way from Australia. You guys are doing a great job. All of that, yada, yada, yada. So humbling experience. And then this was the first time going to the Toronto Expo where just starting up random conversations with people, and they would be talking about podcasts that they listen to or podcasts that they do as well. And I'd be like, oh, I'll check it out. Check out mine. I do it with a couple of guys. We do Cards to the Moon. He goes, oh, I listened to your like I ran into a couple of people that were like, oh, I listened to it already. Like, you guys have a great podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you listened to it. That's pretty amazing. So I think this was the first time where I started to get to experience like connecting with people in the hobby, rather than just our buddies like in our group chat. So that was pretty cool. So it's been it's been a pretty fun ride.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, all the kind comments and the feedback that, we get, even just looking at our customer reviews on Apple Podcasts. I think the latest one a couple weeks ago was from Rob Oregon. Thanks for your comments saying that we're knowledgeable and fun. So, he says 3 Canadian guys with great camaraderie, down to earth, funny, informative, and learning as they go, just like many of us new collectors. And I think that pretty summarizes what we're trying to do. So that's great that he sees what we're trying to do. You know, we're learning as we go, like he said, and we just like talking about the hobby and you know, like both of you said, just meeting people in real life at the Sports Card Expo and even within the city of Toronto where we live. Just connecting with people and having them already listen to our podcast is definitely a humbling experience. And it just makes it more fun. We just realize that we're not in a silo. We're not doing this by ourselves. There's a lot more hobbyists and a lot more collectors that are out there still. Even as we talk about the bear market, there are still people in it just enjoying the hobby for what it is. And that's why we're going to continue to do it into 2023. And we just are optimistic that things will turn around, of course, along with the rest of the economy. But yeah, still fun for me. And I think that's what makes it easy to be consistent with the hobby, just meeting weekly, because there's always something to talk about, and you're doing it with a couple of friends, and just seeing all the DMs too. Like, you know, there's so many DMs that we get about our podcast. That's just good positive feedback. So we appreciate you guys there too. So lots of fun. And I think we said this when we hit 50 episodes, and we said, let's go for another 50. So let's go for another 100, and we'll look back at 200 episodes. And I'm sure we'll be further along with a lot more content. And we'll probably evolve as well in terms of what we talk about and how we produce things. So I'm really looking forward to that. So actually, to mark this 100th episode, we have a little something for one lucky podcast listener. If you're a loyal listener, you would remember in last week's episode, we talked about the 2022 Topps Chrome baseball set and what we thought of the Topps MVP buyback program. Well, we picked up one blaster box. There was only a few left at Walmart, and we're going to give it away to one podcast listener so they can hopefully hit a Judge or a Goldie, get that store credit for their LCS. Probably have better luck than us. You know, we've only hit one or two amongst us, but it's really simple to enter. Just follow us on Instagram at Cards to the Moon, all one word. Subscribe to our podcast, of course, wherever you listen to your podcast. Look for the contest Instagram post, which we'll put up on the same day this episode airs. So this will be next Tuesday of this recording. And all you need to do is just like the post, tag one hobby friend, and that's it. We'll announce the winner in next week's episode, which will be episode 101. All right? I think that's pretty straightforward. Look for the contest post on Instagram and just enter there. So good luck to everyone who enters, and thank you again so much for being a loyal podcast listener. We hope you share this pod with your friends too, and we look forward to bringing you more hobby content for the rest of 2022 and into 2023. All right, let's move on now to our weekly segment we call Hobby Headlines. So on Friday's episode, we looked at some pretty big cards that were sold for significantly lower than what it sold for a year ago during the hobby hype. But today, I wanted to do the opposite. I picked out a few players who have seen a positive trend in their card values over the past year. And this is based on data from the CardLadder Player Index, which takes an aggregate of the player's key cards and monitors the sale prices of those cards over time. Okay, so these players I'm about to name have seen a pretty significant increase in their general card value over the past year. And it'll be obvious why once you hear their names. So for this segment, you guys tell me if you would look to get their cards now, thinking it can still go up, or whether you think you've kind of missed the boat on their cards already, and you're just moving on to another player. All right, so let's start off with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We know he's really killing it in the NBA. His card value index has increased over the past year by 62%.
I think for Shai, and we're all SGA fans, you know, before, and I think his talent is really starting to shine here. So I think there was a correction in the other way that needed to happen, and we are waiting for that correction last year. But obviously he's averaging over 30, third in the league in scoring. So that kind of helps his price, and that's why you're seeing that 62% bump, in my opinion. And I think there's still opportunity to grow on some of his cards because he was so cheap at one point. He was in that kind of like third year, fourth year before when we were talking about it in 2020, 2021. Now he's, entering, I believe, his sixth or so year where, he's put up some serious numbers, and he might be a good buy to pick up some of his cards in terms of like the value stuff. I remember seeing a light blue select, it was a concourse PSA 10 selling for $200, for a numbered card of a guy that caliber, so. Obviously, I don't think you're going to expect a lot of gain off of that at the same time. I just think there was a correction that needed to happen, and that correction is trending upward. But always in a bearish market, you got to be careful. It's not that the card prices are going up. It's just you just see a lot of correction going all around in terms of the hobby. So for me, SGA is a buy. I think there's great opportunity where you could get some rare stuff for fairly cheap, and just if you're a fan, just enjoy. And I think in general his prices will trend upwards in the long term. So that's kind of where I see it with SGA.
Good points.
His player index has gone up 62% over the past year, and I bet you that 62% has been in like the past 30 days, because that's how hot this guy's been. We, like Hyung said, we're all as Canadians, we all love SGA. He's on top of my list of a lot of PC cards. On the Canadian side, if you live in Canada, I think SGA is, you can't go wrong, because when you go to these, especially when you go to like the expo, SGA cards trade like hot hockey cards. Like it's very, very liquid. So we're kind of in a very unique, and we're in a good position, right? Versus some of our neighbors down south. But SGA, I don't know. I think you guys know me. I'm huge on him, and he's showing. I think people were a bit more down on him because he's on a team that's, quote unquote, not going to win anytime soon, just basement dwelling. He's going to get lost in the shuffle, but he's just playing so good that he's rising above all of that negativity and clearly making a name for himself. So I think this is the time, if you have him, to be honest, I'm still big on him, but I'd probably take I'd probably take advantage of the bump that's happening right now, because Shea is one of those guys. He's going to settle down again, and people are going to be like, look at the Thunder, they're garbage, and he's dropping 30, but he's been dropping 30 for 2 years straight now, nothing different, and it's just going to start to calm down again. So I think take advantage of the bump right now if you have him, and then if you're like us and you PC him and you enjoy his cards, I think you can get back into him either later into the lull of the season or into the off season. So that's probably what I'm planning on doing. Okay. And also to remember, Shai Gilgeous is one of these guys that get injured very easily. So even though he's on this hot streak, let's say he gets injured for 20 games, I think that could really kind of crater his value. So just something to keep in mind. Okay.
Yeah, good points too. I used to have a Shai Gilgeous, like the Origins autograph card. Bought it for like $35, and then I sold it for like 80. I think I could get it for like a couple hundred now. So I have a personal bias. I can't buy back in because I sold it for too cheap. But then when Hyung was talking, I'm like, wow, his cards aren't that super expensive despite
super cheap,
how he's playing. Yeah, like his Prizm signatures is like a few $100s. I thought it would be a lot more, even his silver Prizms PSA 10s is not that much.
They haven't moved that crazy.
It's just gradually gone up, and I guess it's in comparison to cards that have just dropped off the cliff. It makes it look like his cards have increased even more, but it's just a gradual increase. Doesn't matter that it's a bear market. So that's how well he's playing. So I'm like, maybe I'll go buy back in. And then I heard John talk, and then he talked about how crappy the OKC Thunder was and probably how. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'm selling now. So if John talked first and then Hyung talked, I would probably side with Hyung. So I'm just being influenced by the last person who talked. And I'm going to go with John on this. The off season, we'll see a dip, and then maybe that's a good time to pick one up. All right. Second basketball player, and then we'll move to another sport. our friend Brian Dennison, aka Cajun Cardboard, was high on this guy before the season started, and he was bang on. Anthony Simons, his card value has increased 420%.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's probably because it started much lower than even Shea, obviously. He's 25 points per game now, up from 17 last year and up from 7 the year before that. So he's seen really good progress in his development. So what are you doing with Anthony?
I'm definitely a sell on Anthony, especially if SGA is, like this is the exact perfect example. It's like where are Simon's prices compared to SGA in terms of, and then what has SGA done in the league, and what does he have to do? So I could see Simon's received a huge bump, especially after not being an impact player and kind of floating in the behind the scenes the last few years before last season. So his gradual, obviously, going from 7 points a game to 17 to 25 now is showing that bump. So I'm a sell on Simons. But yeah, Brian from Cajun Cardboard was spot on. It's like if you bought into him before the season, I think there was great opportunity to cash out right now and take the profits.
Yeah.
Brian, if you're listening, sell it all.
I think he still has a stack, but yeah.
I think he posted like an image of just some of the cards he had. I swear that he owns the entire population of all Anthony Simon cards out there. That's pretty incredible. But I honestly, I was, when he was on the show and he was talking Anthony Simons, I'm not a big believer, to be honest. But man, this kid is lights out the last 20 games. He is a 3-point specialist, man. He's playing basically like Klay Thompson. Like he's killing it right now. So I really don't know enough about him to know exactly what his long term is. But Brian obviously knows. He follows him very, very closely, even from like the junior days. So he knows exactly what talent he's staring at. But from a general point, from coming from somebody that doesn't know Simons that well, I would probably think like Hyung and be like, okay, let's take advantage of this bump right now, and sell off if you have a big collection, sell off a good portion of it. But yeah, Brian would know better.
Okay. Yeah, I'll defer to Brian as well. But if I had to choose right now, I'm with you guys. I think it's also a team thing. Portland started really hot, and now they're just a couple of games over 500. And I think that the Trailblazers really have a hard time breaking through in the West. So I'm not a huge believer in the Trailblazers making it deep into the playoffs if they make it into the top 9-10 seeds to get in. So yeah, and I think there's just a lot of other flashier rookies that are going to take the spotlight at some point throughout the league, and I'd rather probably spend my profits from selling Simon's cards now on those players. Okay, I have one football player. Jalen Hurts, 99% increase. Obviously, the Eagles are killing it. This is probably the third time we're bringing him up in this podcast. And each time I'm like, sell, and he just keeps performing. At what point do you say like, okay, I got to get one of his cards at least?
At no point. Not at these prices. Well, for me, it's like if you want to like take a chance at Philly, taking it all, then I think you're going to see a huge like opportunity there. But that's given that, Jalen Hurts, brings home some brass and, he's been winning, which is a very, very good sign. But like I said, this is his first big season and there's still a lot of, career left in him. So if you're thinking long-term with Jalen Hurts, there's a lot of, I think, risk when it comes to it. And I think unless he wins a Super Bowl, I think his prices are going to tank in the offseason. If you want to get into a Jalen Hurts in the offseason, I think that's the time to do it. But I think there's a lot of hype around him. And, I mean, they've been killing it. They've been literally, like, the Eagles look really good. And Jalen Hurts is, playing lights out too. So, I think he's a sell at this point, or even, like, wait it a bit if you have him. I think selling, see if how playoff football goes, and if he could make a good run, I think there's going to be a good opportunity to profit there. But I don't think it's definitely not a buy. Look at Burrow, Herbert, from last year, just in general, and their prices are astronomical, right? So Jalen Hurts even has opportunity compared to like the Hurts and Burrow comparison, because I thought they were way overpriced, whereas Jalen Hurts is not as overpriced because it took him a couple years or a couple seasons. So I think on some cards there might be opportunity. You just have to look, but on your main cards, like your, I guess it would be like your NTs and stuff like that, where I think they're super overpriced. There might be opportunity in the lower end stuff like the optics and the selects and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
Okay.
I have to imagine Jalen Hurts is in MVP conversation. Probably him and Mahomes, I'm gonna guess. You know what? Just knowing how volatile football is, I would probably, I think if MVP conversations within the next 5 weeks start to really look like it's going in Hurts' favor, I would probably look to take advantage and sell. Like, be ready to pounce to sell within the next couple of weeks, especially if he starts putting up 2 or 3 really monstrous performances right before the season ends, and then pretty much, it looks like he's going to be like in a 50-50 dog race or even like a favorite to win the MVP. I would probably look to sell. I mean, like, look at just the history of how volatile football is. Look how good Patrick Mahomes is, and because he went back-to-back, Super Bowl appearances and he didn't end up winning it, like, his cards start to come down, right? Like, even though just he's been that incredible, his cards still came down. So I think for people like Hurts, and we talked about it, like Burrows and the Justin Herberts of the world, where there's sort of hype that's built in, I think you got to kind of wait a couple of years. So if you have the Hurts cards now, I think for me, I would watch the next couple of weeks and look to sell.
Yeah, I got to triple down on my conviction to not buy in. So I'm selling. If I still have it, I'm selling. And he's one of the guys that can make me look really, really silly by the end of the year. Like, if he wins the Super Bowl, if he wins the MVP, I'll look like an idiot. So I'm playing the odds. It's hard to win a Super Bowl. I looked at the Super Bowl odds. The Eagles started at plus 4,000. They're at plus 550 now. So they're third. They're still behind the Bills and the Chiefs, but not by much. So they've made a lot of big strides, and they got a shot. The way they're playing, they got a shot. But at this point, I can't buy in at the current prices either. So, okay, next one. I got one hockey guy before we go to baseball to wrap up the segment. Connor McDavid, 99.5% increase. If you look at his pattern of his cards, it starts at a certain base level. It goes up, and then it dips a little bit, but the base level is higher than the previous base level. It goes up, dips, and then that base level is higher than the previous. That's the pattern for Connor McDavid. Do you think that keeps on playing itself out? And if that happens, then it should be a time to buy, right? Because you're expecting it to continually go up. I don't know. Is it too expensive now?
I think it is expensive, but I think the way Connor McDavid is playing, like he's averaging 2 points per game, and he's doing this on a consistent level on a somewhat successful team, right? So I like Connor McDavid, and his cards are kind of boring, to be honest, because there's not really options. You got his young guns, you got his SP Authentic Auto, which are already priced out of a lot of people, and then his Upper Deck, the cup, right? So like between those three, I think Young Guns obviously is kind of like the most realistic for a lot of people, and I would monitor those dips like you're saying. I think there's Connor McDavid is always a buying opportunity as long as he's playing. I think you follow that method of just constantly buying as much as you can in the long term, because this guy's a dude, man. Like, this guy's he is the guy, right? So he is the next Gretzky, and it's a buy for me for Connor McDavid in terms of kind of like monitoring any good opportunity or any dip at that point, right? Yep. So
Connor McDavid is I think you could definitely, he moves seasonally. Like, you'll see seasonal swings, and the reason why you see seasonal swings is because this kid is consistently elite. He's not one of those kids that, a down year he scores 85 points and he happens to have a big year and he scores 100. No. This kid is going to drop like 120 points like every year in, year out. He's just he is as generational as it gets. This kid is Lionel Messi with skates on. That's basically what you're looking at. So he's, his cards will come out, especially during the hype of the beginning of the season. That's where you're going to see that huge uptick. He comes out most of the times. He scores a hat trick in his first game of the season. Then he drops 5 points in another game. Then he drops 6
Right.
points in another game, and his card goes wild. And then you get into the mid-season lull where he's still getting hat tricks or he's still getting 5 points, but it's like ho hum, it's just McDavid, kind of like being McDavid, and his card value starts to like settle down. And then you go into the offseason, it comes down even further, right? So he's just one of those guys going to be consistently elite. He's as a generational of an athlete as you're going to get. So I think if you wanted McDavid, just time one of these lull periods, either go for mid-season lull or definitely go for off-season. I know off-season is generally harder because, who's going to be spending $20K on a future watch Connor McDavid on the off-season? You're probably going to want to spend that money
Right.
on a football player or like a baseball player or something like that, right? So I know it's difficult, but yeah, if you can time McDavid in the cooler months, he is certainly a kid. If you're going to get into hockey at all, or if you're already into hockey, yeah, you have to have a McDavid somewhere in your collection.
Yeah. I'm always on the record for wanting to have a McDavid in my collection, and I'm always worried that it's going to be too late at one point if I don't pull the trigger fast. So I'm trying to sell a lot of my current cards, liquidating it to reinvest into Connor McDavid because, God forbid if Edmonton Oilers wins the Stanley
Right.
Cup. And then it's like, okay,
it goes to another
the
level.
the cards that you want, yeah, it's just it'll go into stratosphere and like he's like you said, John, he's consistently elite, and in a funny way, it's boring because he's consistently elite.
Yeah.
So yeah, McDavid, and when all is said and done, if he has a full career, the numbers are going to look ridiculous. I think the numbers are just going to look insane, and then people are going to realize, okay, this guy truly is a generational player. So, yeah, time to dip, because it won't go down to, the previous baseline. Is just a general positive trend. One of the more confident guys I would invest in for sure in the sports card hobby. Okay, the last two guys, I'm going to put them together because they're both rookies in the same year. Bobby Witt, 79% increase. If you look at his chart, it started pretty low until March, April when the season started, and it just jumped super high, and it came all the way down, but not quite. It actually, we're talking about new baseline with McDavid. There's a new baseline set for Bobby Witt, and it's 79% of what it was in November, December of last year. Okay, so it's still up. And then J-Rod, of course, is a bit higher at 156% increase, obviously because he won Rookie of the Year. So yeah, Bobby Witt and J-Rod.
For me, I think there's opportunity. Obviously, I like both players a lot. I like Julio a little better, but the problem with Julio is he has that Acuna effect on him where his prices are baked in to what he's accomplishing, and I expect him to keep on playing the way he's doing. So that's why there's that hype. But there's been too much of a hype where I think prices are eventually going to come down with Julio. But because Bobby Witt Jr. started so slow, I think there was a massive correction in terms of his Bowman Chrome autos. And because the release of their rookie cards, both their rookie cards this year, I think there's actually good opportunity, more so with Bobby Witt than Julio Rodriguez in the paper stuff, right? Or in the even like the flagship stuff like Topps Chrome. I think the Bowman Chrome, everybody was on the hype. Bobby Witt Jr. was a big time prospect. Now that he's here, and there's more options for cards, that Bowman Chrome looks less desirable in my opinion. And I think it's so lopsided with Bobby Witt, where I think for Topps Update, you could get there was a Independence Day for like 525 or best offer. Like to me, it's like Bobby Witt Jr. didn't have a terrible season last year. He still stole 30 bags, hit 20 home runs, and that's after struggling and hitting like a buck, whatever he did in the first month and a bit. So I think Julio Rodriguez is a little different because all his prices are still expensive. But I might be a buy on Bobby Witt in terms of kind of like his flagship stuff. I'll monitor his Bowman Chrome stuff, but I think the Bowman Chrome was so overpriced that no matter what he does, it's still going to constantly correct itself to where it should have been. So I think it's a sell opportunity in terms of the Bowman Chrome. It's a buy opportunity in terms of his flagship if you're going that way. But Julio, I would stay off of a bit until maybe there's a slight dip before spring, or otherwise you see how his season pans out and then go in after kind of like mid-season on Julio when the hype of all these card releases are finished.
Yeah, makes sense.
I'm going to stick to my position on first-year players. I think the three of us have a bit of a soft spot for baseball, so we might be a little bit clouded in judgment, but I'm going to say first-year players, I am not touching them, period. So J-Rod, Bobby Witt, if I had them, I'd probably be selling, and I certainly wouldn't be buying right now. So I'm going to say sell for both. Now, that being said, baseball is slightly different because you got Bowman first, and you've had these Bowman first cards that have been kind of marinating in the background. Until the actual like major league release comes out. So I get it. Baseball's a bit different, but I'm still these two guys, I still think they got that first year hype on them. So I'm going to say sell for both.
Okay. That's reasonable too. I'm aligned with Hyung in this case. Like if you look at J-Rod's, player index, it just increased and then it stayed up at that level. And right now it hasn't seen a dip. It's still up there because obviously the hype's still there for J-Rod and there's high expectations going to next season. So for me, like those guys, I just say I've missed the boat on him and I'm moving on. But I love the charts of like Bobby Witt. They get the initial spike because everyone wants him. I never buy during those spikes because it's obviously inflated. And then for one reason or another, they don't perform as well as expected. And it's to be expected because they're all young kids. And then their prices come crashing down. So like his Bowman Chrome rookie auto PSA 10 sold for like $3,500 during the peak. It's going for just over 1,000 now. Mm-hmm. To me, that's attractive. If it goes like under 1,000, I might buy one because like if you look at his stats, like you said, 20 home runs and 30 steals, like right. That's pretty damn good for a rookie
as a 22-year-old.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know why, but there's a general sentiment that maybe it was because of his slow start, but there's a general sentiment that Bobby Witt didn't have the greatest season. But you look at his stats, it's like he did pretty well. So I think if he can take the next step up, 30-30, and really help the Royals, like I think that has room to grow. So I'm in on Bobby Witt if it dips under 1,000, especially for a Bowman Chrome rookie auto. So yeah, hopefully all these players continue to perform and make bigger profits for those investing in their cards. So yeah, we'll see how they do in their respective seasons. All right, let's move on to a segment we've been doing somewhat regularly. We call it Overrated, Underrated. And this week's theme is parallels and refractors. And we've done this theme before, so this will be part 2, okay? If you're listening to the segment for the first time, this is where I just kind of mention, in this case, a parallel or refractor, and you guys tell me if you think it's overrated or underrated. Simple as that. Okay, and the first one, it could be slightly controversial. Silver Prizms for football and basketball, especially in Panini. Do you think it's overrated or underrated?
I think it's overrated, but I love silvers. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're one of my favorite parallels. They're overrated. People overpay for them. It's a high pop count. They look good. That's all you're getting. And it's an OG classic. It's not like the refractors before that where we fell in love in the 90s and 2000s of like the Topps Chrome refractors, like, and now the silver prisms with Panini, post 2012. So for me, I think, and a lot of the silvers again, even with Panini from 2012 to 2018, those were a lot rare, right? Especially the younger year prisms, But now I feel like, I even when I rip blasters, you they're not super rare. You get a silver almost every pack. So for me, the pop counts get so high. I even was looking at some of the Prizm, even Anthony Simons. Like there's more Prizm than base graded, or silver. More silver Prizms for Anthony Simons than there is his base Prizm. Right. So graded. It's graded. Like it's like double the pop count in silvers compared to the bases, right? And obviously price point matters in that, but I'm just saying like the excitement of silver and refractors, I get the hype, but I just think they're super overrated at this point because they're just mass produced.
Okay. Johnny,
I'm gonna say overrated too. And we're older guys, we're OG. Like I love refractors. So objectively, without thinking about price, without thinking of pop count, I love the original rainbow refractor. So I get the appeal, but for anybody new coming to the hobby that doesn't know the history behind Topps Finest refractors and Topps Chrome refractors, et cetera, that eventually morphed into Panini and then silver Prizms, they'll be really confused. We've talked about this many times. You look at pricing and then you look at silver Prizm and it's the most common, but it's super expensive. And then you get into like Hyper Prizm, which is a lot more rare, but it's not worth as much. You get into green Prizms, which is way more rare, but it's not worth as much. So it's just very confusing to a newcomer to be like, why the heck is silver Prizm this very common sort of parallel? Probably the most common, the most expensive, right? It's one of those exactly a hobby logic thing, right? So I think because it's a hobby logic thing, I mean, it obviously could hold up. It's not, it's not like nothing against the pricing or anything, but I think for what it is, it's overrated.
Okay. I'm surprised. I thought one of you would definitely say underrated because it's a hobby logic thing and, like you love the look of silvers. So I thought I would get you, but it's going to be an overrated sweep for sure. I have a Luka silver Prizm and that, it's in a way it could be seen as underrated because it hasn't really tanked like all the other parallels. Silver's kind of held up its own.
And it has liquidity versus, let's say, like a green or something
very
like that.
Liquid. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Very liquid. So, but at the same time, for all the reasons you mentioned, hobby logic thing, it's definitely overrated. So I might actually try to sell my silver having this discussion. We'll see. Johnny, you mentioned Hyper Prizm. That's the next thing on our list. Hyper Prizms. Overrated or underrated?
I think super underrated. I think based on their pop counts, just looking at Luka, PSA 10 silver in a Luka was pop 2000 plus, and then silver in a Luka Hyper Prizm, prices on a Hyper Prizm Luka PSA 10 pop count was 92, right? So for me, based on the pricing, they're very similar. I haven't checked hyper pricings lately in the silvers and Lukas, but I think for what you're getting, I think it's a great looking card. It's like the Prizm refractors in Topps Chrome. So they're great looking cards, and it's something different than base and a little more rare than silver. So I think there's a lot of value in it in terms of where they usually sit in terms of price point. So I'm going underrated for Hyper Prizms.
Nice. And to your point, the last one sold for Luka Doncic Hyper Prizm PSA 10, $1,675. Wow. Pop count 99 compared to a 2,000 plus pop count for a silver Prizm, which sold for about 1,900, 2,000. Yeah.
Oh, you're giving away my secret buy. So I have been watching Luka Hyper Prizms, following it for quite a while, probably over 2 years now. Mm-hmm. I always thought it was underrated, so I'm going to say Hyper Prizm is certainly very underrated. And when the hobby started going crazy back in early 2021, I think Hyper finally kind of got recognized because of the pop count. It started to pull away from silver, but we're now at a position now where it's kind of fallen back to the similar pricing to the silver, which doesn't make sense to me. I think the pop count and Hyper. So for those that don't know, the Hyper Prizm is that sort of like what shape is that? Like a parallelogram?
It's like a chevron.
Yeah. It's kind of like that pattern. And for one reason or another, and this is also goes with the Topps Chrome Prizm, it's the same pattern.
Right.
But for some reason, for every grading company, it's a very tough grade. We're talking like 10% gem rate. And I don't know what it is exactly. When you look at the card, I personally think it's because the design, there's a bit of a break in some of the cards where you see like a big black line that goes across. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's probably it, because there's like a printing error in the way the Prizm design goes down. But then I look at some of the Luka Hyper Prizm PSA 10s and they all have that black line. So I don't really understand why that design in particular across Panini and Topps Chrome is such a difficult grade, but that makes it very underrated because it's a fairly common parallel card, but when you get into the gem rates, it becomes pretty rare. So yeah, underrated.
Yeah. Another one of those Hobby Logic things for me, but I love the look of Hyper Prizms, and I don't know why they're as cheap as they are, relatively speaking. So I'm aligned with you guys. Very, very underrated. Okay, I'm going to go with one more, and this is mostly for baseball. The Shimmer Refractors, right? You see the orange and red Shimmers, and they're all equally numbered with the true reds, but significantly cost less than those.
I'm personally like, I don't love the Shimmers, to be honest, but I still think they're underrated. Like, there's no reason why an orange Shimmer should like not sell like a higher pop gold, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But that's what you see so many people that like the true refractors, which I'm a huge fan of. Like, to me, if those are properly rated, you know, Shimmers are definitely underrated in terms of the value they demand. But yeah, I'm not, at the same time, I'm not a huge fan, I would say. Like, but I do think they're underrated still.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know where I stand on this one. I think I'm going to go the opposite direction. I think I understand what Hyung's saying, and I actually wanted to say the same thing, that they're underrated, but I'm going to say overrated. And I don't know how much they're overrated, because I think Shimmers have corrected quite a bit, and really come down in value when you ratio them to the true. But I think in the current market, as we get into this, you know, we're in the ultra modern space, and we continue to go forward. I think with all these crazy different parallels coming out, it's just going to put such a bigger spotlight on the original true colors, that I feel like these Shimmers will just going to go to the wayside. Whatever other parallel there is, wave, shimmer, blah, 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 is just going to start to fall to the wayside. And I think everybody's going to start to really hone in on trues. So for that, the fact that Shimmer's still holding up now, I think as we move forward and these more parallels come out, I'm going to say overrated.
Yeah, I'm going to say overrated too, because I get the argument where people say orange Shimmers and true orange, they're both numbered to 25. The scarcity is the same, so why would the true orange cost more than, or significantly cost more in some cases, than the orange Shimmer? But to me, the orange Shimmer is like a made-up parallel. Like, what's to say Topps or Panini won't come out with orange zigzag next year, or orange wavy lines, like they could, and then say, oh, it's numbered to 25, but we're making more parallels. I could see that potentially happening. I don't know if Fanatics taking over will not do that, or, if that's something they're aware of, who knows, but it's a possibility. So I'm going to say the non-true refractors just generally tend to be overrated, in my opinion. All right. I'm sure we could do a part 3 for, this overrated, underrated segment, because there's so many different parallels, so many different refractors out there. So we'll revisit this again in a future overrated, underrated segment. Okay, to wrap up this show, we will go to our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And as usual, I'm going to throw it to Hyung to kick things off.
All right. I'm going to keep it basic, actually, talking about this whole orange Shimmer and whatnot, and if it's a real parallel or not. Completely disagree, because there's some monster cards that are in Shimmers.
Sure.
that we're missing out here. You guys can't. Do you guys see that red Acuna Bowman Chrome Red BGS
Oh, yeah.
Black
Yeah.
Label.
Oh,
Somebody
yeah.
flew to
That's
pick up
nice.
Somebody
the Red
flew in
Shimmer.
to buy that thing. Yeah.
Insane
Wow.
card, and there's nothing wrong. Shimmer more for me. Like that thing is absolutely gorgeous. So
Take it. Just take it.
Yeah. Anyways, on that topic, I'm gonna say, would you guys rather, well, let's talk Bowman Chrome specifically. You're in prospect, and you have a nice monster potential prospect. Would you rather have a PSA 10 orange numbered, true orange numbered to 25, or would you have a PSA 10 true gold numbered to 50? Okay, let's just say the pop counts are somewhat similar. There's a little more rarity obviously in the orange, but by not too much, right? PSA 10s are still hard to come by. Would you rather the true gold out of 50 or a true orange out of 25 in terms of a Bowman Chrome?
I think I'm going gold, man. I over the last 12 months, gold has started to really, that word has, I mean, not even 12 months. It's been a while, but, talking about Shimmer and talking about how things are going to start to get lost in the shuffle, I think gold is going to start to become the winner of the parallel cards. Doesn't matter what the serial numbering is. Obviously, I think true orange will always continue to be higher, but you never know in the future. Like, let's say we're looking at a lens 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It's, again, we're talking about hobby logic. Hobby could just turn on it and be like, yep, gold is the chase card. Like, that is the chase. And even though it's numbered more than orange, it could become greater. So I think I would put my money on gold long term, being worth more. But yeah.
Okay. For me, it's simple math. 25 is less than 50. Therefore, it's more scarce than the gold. And I think in terms of your argument about, like, whether collectors will turn on the different colors that are not gold, I think there's a canon. There's like a orange, red, gold, blue, green. That's in the canon of refractors.
True.
It will not lose value over time. That's
It'll
my
stay
opinion.
consistent.
And yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So
could
I'm
very
sticking
well.
with true orange over true gold. If it was an orange shimmer, that's a harder question for me to answer. But I might go for true
Interesting.
gold in that case. But because it's true orange, I'm going with that.
Man, I keep going back and forth with this, to be honest, because I was in the boat that I used to really like true orange. I think there's something about orange that just pops. But we said it earlier in 2022 that, like, something about gold refractors are just kind of like the classic. And I think I'm actually gonna go gold in this instance.
Wow.
Yeah, like I can't believe I'm saying it, but as of right now, like I just love gold refractors, true gold. I just think that there's something to it, and I think just the desirability for the price point compared to an orange is a lot higher. I think there's people that necessarily don't like orange, whereas all people are on gold. Like, gold is kind of like the standard. And don't get me wrong, this is like close because I go back and forth all the time. I have no problem owning any true orange PSA 10 autos of some prospects. So,
Right.
But in this situation, I think I'm gonna go gold. Tomorrow,
Okay.
next week it could be orange, but as of right now, today, I'm going gold.
All right, it's all good. I'll take all the profits for myself. All right, Johnny, you're next.
All right, let's go, boys. So, in honor of the Luka, when we talked about the Luka 1-of-1 logo man that sold for 3.2 or 3.1 or whatever it was, and obviously a lot of people are like, why would you spend all that money on Luka? He's not proven, yada yada yada. So let's put it to a smaller test. So I'm gonna go 2018 Prizm Luka Blue Ice PSA 9 versus the iconic 1980 Topps rookie Bird Magic Dr. J PSA 9. The last Bird Magic just sold recently for $12K. the last Blue Ice PSA 9 sold earlier in the summer for 14. So I would imagine if it were to sell today, it'd probably be in and around 12K as well. So we're gonna, for the sake of argument, they're both 12K. Which one are you picking?
Is Blue Ice numbered to 99?
Numbered to 99.
It is.
Blue Ice. Oh,
It's
that
a,
card
it's
is
a pretty,
so nice.
It's a pretty grail card in the Luka
I just
space.
think it's a little overpriced. That's the problem, but I like it so much, and it used to be more expensive. I assume, right? So I think that card is way overpriced. Man, but I do like gambling, and I do like modern cards. So I like relevancy. That's why, you know what? Like, it's kind of like in business, like real estate, or in life in general, real estate ends up being the end goal of any investment. But then, you know, during that time, you're investing in other stuff to kind of like make that money. So I feel like the what was it? The Dr. J card is a little like, kind of like, okay, when you're ready to kind of like call it a hobby, and you just want to rest your money in
Ride it out.
portfolios, and yeah,
Right.
it's kind of like that. I'm not there yet. I'm still on the, you know what? Let's see what this does it when Luka, you know, wins a ring or something like that, right? So, and the Blue Ice is the color match that everybody wants. It's a grail card that we always talk about. Numbered to 99, super rare. So I'm gonna go Luka Blue Ice PSA 9. Crazy.
Yeah. So this is the point I'm making, right? Like, people think that guy with the logo man 1/1 is crazy, but he's probably thinking exactly like Hyung is, except scale it by 1 million. And we're talking about millions of dollars.
Yeah. This one's easy for me. Put me in the crazy camp too. Color match, number to 99. Luka, generational
There we
player.
go.
Prizm. Yeah, I love it. Luka all the way. And, you know, the Bird Magic Dr. J card's classic. But
for
I
sure.
saw the podcast, still 620 for PSA 9. So too many reasons to go with Luka Blue Ice.
Yep, we are suckers for Luka on this show, no question. I certainly am as well. I love that Bird Magic card. I would love to own it one day, but how could you, at this point in your hobby collecting career, how could you turn down a Blue Ice Luka iconic Prizm? So, I mean, this is the point that I was trying to highlight again about the logo man. Like, this is, yeah, like, people say people are crazy, but look at the three of us. We're picking the Luka over like a very safe, you know, iconic card, right? So, yeah.
True. Point taken, point made.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, last one from me. It's a general one too. Really simple. With the World Cup, are you investing in Cristiano Ronaldo rookie cards versus Lionel Messi rookie cards? I know we did this one in the past. I feel like it might have been a Ronaldo sweep. And the reason for that was like he just has much more influence over the world. Look at his Instagram followers, you know, way more than Messi. But I just read a Wall Street Journal article. Ronaldo's in a bit of trouble. You know, he was benched today to start the game, and the guy who replaced him scored a hat trick. It looks like it's a, you know, changing of the guard, so to speak. And his issues with Manchester United. You know, the article is saying like it's hard to see where he goes to any other top level Premier team. He might play in Saudi Arabia in obscurity for the rest of his playing career. Just saying that for Ronaldo, there's a shadow over his career right now, right? But does that influence you in terms of what you decide now?
Well, you kind of influenced me a little bit because, you know, I've been going back and forth on this one because I personally think, you know, I like Messi better. Yeah. But in terms of investment perspective, I think Ronaldo might have the edge on Messi in terms of how people think. So I would just look at it that way. But if it were up to me, because, you know, I like the player, which is the case in this, I'm gonna go Messi. Actually, I think he's a bit younger. They're obviously on the tail end of their career, and they're very head to head in terms of kind of like what they've accomplished individually. But I just think Messi has the edge over Ronaldo as being kind of like the greatest player, like, or like kind of like better than Ronaldo in terms of when Messi's playing, he's scoring more. for the time he's, when it matters, stuff like that, where I just think Messi is a better soccer player, and Ronaldo has a bigger influence. And if it went down to that, I'm still leaning with Messi.
Okay.
Yeah,
John?
I'm gonna switch gears from my answer before. This question is been a question for the last 10-15 years, and it really comes down to who you like better, right? From a collection standpoint. So for me, I am, of the two guys, I'm way more of a fan to Cristiano Ronaldo that I am Messi.
Huh.
But and that's just from a collecting standpoint. But when I'm going to pick based on investing standpoint, and I think as these guys are winding down their careers, there is going to be conversation. And to me, these two guys are in the top 4. Like they're up there for the greatest of all time. But as that conversation starts happening, as these guys wind down their careers, I think Messi's going to have the edge. I think Messi will go down as the greatest of all time. Maybe Pele fans will have something to say about that, but I think because now we're winding down their careers, and this is going to be the last World Cup for both of them, I think that kind of narrative and that kind of conversation is going to start to pick up. And from an investment standpoint, I think Messi wins because I think he will go down as the greatest of all time, especially between these two. I think Messi is going to have that edge. So it makes sense to go after Messi.
Yeah. Man, I didn't think it would be a sweep, but it's going to be a Messi sweep. Maybe I shouldn't have done that preamble about Ronaldo.
I think I think I was still going
Messi.
There's big rumors about him going to Saudi, man. I mean, he's going to get a huge bag, right? So it's like, man.
Just doing it for the money at that point, right? But, Messi, for all your points that you guys mentioned, I agree. The one thing I would add is that there's rumors that he might go to Miami, play for in the MLS, I guess. With the Miami FC team. So if he does that, he's going to have relevancy in the States. That's going to be big for the hobby, I think. And
good point.
And that'll be a great way to end his career. I'd rather play in the States than Saudi, to tell you the truth, if I want to think about my legacy at that point. So if that's true, then that's added bonus for Messi collectors. So I'm going with Messi as well. And personally, I like Messi over Ronaldo, actually. So it's an easy one for me. All right, that wraps up episode 100. Again, we'd like to thank all of our subscribers and listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, we really appreciate if you give us 5 stars wherever you listen to your episode. Leave us a nice comment and feedback. And we always love reading those. And again, thank you so much. We always love doing content for you guys. Here's to 100 more. All right, see you next week for a new episode. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.